Explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve. It's what we try to do each and every day here on the WDW Pro channel. And yet, once again, that is what we are aiming for. This time joined by Miss Melonie Mac here to talk to us about identity and self-improvement and how that's being played out lately in the media. Melonie, it's such a pleasure to have you on the channel today. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Good to talk to you again.
Absolutely. Melonie was on the Renegade Online show a couple of Sundays ago, and that was one of the most enjoyable experiences that we've had. There was just such a fantastic flow to the conversation, and so you were a great part of that. And of course, you're experiencing all kinds of success across YouTube and social media. Although, along with success, sometimes there are detractors as well. It's funny how that works, and so that's going to play into our conversation a little bit today. First of all, Melonie, can you tell everybody out there who maybe they're not familiar with you? My channel is sometimes devoted to theme park and travel and leisure and that sort of thing. We do cover the pop culture stuff, but for those who have not yet met you online, right? For those of you who have not encountered Melonie, just share a little bit about yourself, please.
Yes. So my name is Melonie Mac. I have been making content online for like over 13 years, but mostly focused on like the gaming space, nerd culture, all that. But with the rise of all the woke mob mentality and all that, I have been canceled a few times. It's a regular basis thing now, and a lot of what I talk about on my videos now, I've just fully leaned into that now. I'm just like, all right, I'm already canceled as it is anyway. I am just unfiltered, leaving all my opinions about all this kind of stuff that's going on in nerd culture, and how we've had so many things that we've loved just been hijacked and woke washed and completely just changed and unrecognizable. And then I started my Melonie Mac Go Boom YouTube channel a little over a year ago to focus really hardcore on like these type of topics. And it's been so much fun. It's been so free, not worrying about the cancel mob anymore, and just like, okay, cancel me again, sure.
That's right. So I think this is going to be a very fun conversation. Before we dive into the meat of it, though, can you tell me a little bit about? You said you've been doing this for 13 years. What was it? What was it that drew you into this space in the first place? Because that makes you quite the early adopter into streaming. So, what was it that made you so interested?
I've just been like, I grew up a homeschool nerd. Like me and my brothers and stuff, we've always been like gamers and into like nerdy type hobbies and stuff. And so I used to frequent like gaming forums and stuff back before YouTube and all that, and just would always talk about video games. I'd make like music videos to gaming, like gaming cutscenes and stuff like that. I'd make little music videos, and
were they satirical songs then?
No, it was just it was like those old. I know some who've done it, y'all remember, but it was like, put a Linkin Park song to an edited thing of like, I don't know, pick Final Fantasy or something, like different cutscenes and try to make it look cool. And it's kind of cringe now, but back, you were
on the cutting edge back then.
It was like, I don't know, early 2000s. That was the thing. That was like really fun to do. So I do stuff like that on like game trailers, and that was like everybody, all kinds of people on the game trailers forums would do that and share and rate each other's videos and all that. So I do stuff like that, talk about games all the time, and then then I guess YouTube was just kind of an extension of that for me, because that was before people were making any type of money doing anything like this. So I was like, well, why don't I just make videos and talk about video games and talk about things that I like? And I would share it on like these forums with my friends on the internet. And I never in a million years thought it would ever be my career, because that was unheard of back then.
No, that wasn't a possibility.
Yeah, it wasn't. So I just kind of walked into it. I was just doing it for fun, and then gaming streaming came out shortly after all that. And yeah, I'm just one of the early adopters of this, just for fun.
Well, now the first time that I encountered you online was you were eating a stick of butter, I believe. And
Yeah.
so that was sort of the thing I think that caused that to go viral. You were giving your opinion while eating straight butter. Tell us a little bit about that diet and how you came up with the idea to sit there and eat the butter. Did you know that would go viral? Had you tried it,
I
2 dozen times and the butter just wasn't doing it? And finally it was that one stick.
No, that was the first time I tried that. It was I was just doing it for like satire type stuff, but I mean there was some truth to it, what I felt, because at the time I was thinking, or it was just for like TikTok and like YouTube shorts and all that. It was just for funsies. I just thought it'd be funny. Um and I was thinking about just kind of mixing a real world problem with, for example, right now, and how it has been the last few years, is people glorifying mental illness in a variety of ways. People are putting their mental illnesses in their Twitter bios like it's something to
And
brag
physical
about.
illness too, Melanie. Physical
That
illnesses
too,
as well. Yes.
exactly. And so, I was talking about how crazy that is, and then I thought, oh, this will be a funny opportunity for me to lump feminism into mental illness just as a joke. And then I thought, wait, how can I make this even more like, how can I make this even funnier? Oh, let me be eating a stick of butter, because even though that is something I eat a lot of butter because I follow the carnivore diet. But I just thought, how funny and ironic is that going to look for me to talk about people's bragging about their mental illness while I'm in a car eating a stick of butter. And so I just did it. I grabbed a stick of butter, brought it to my car to make the video, and it went super viral. Most people didn't get that it was supposed to be a part of the bit, and they just thought, oh wow, look at you talking about people's mental illnesses while you're eating a stick of butter in a car. Like, I gotcha. I mean, that was part of the
You baited them into the butter trick. It works every
yeah,
time.
that was part of the joke. But okay, it was funny because most people just focused on the butter part. But it was fun. So I did that. I did a few more videos like that for a bit there. That was like a little over a year ago, I think, when I did that initially. But yeah, it became kind of like a series of things, and then eventually I kind of moved on to other stuff because I felt like I was playing it out a bit.
Right? Well, you could always do melted butter and just drink it
There you
out of a
go.
Starbucks cup. But it wouldn't have the same visual impact.
Right.
So, okay, so let's talk about the whole the butter thing, because this actually I think goes into your personality.
Mhm.
So, eating a stick of butter is not the norm, let's say. That's
Right.
not what people are expecting. Clearly, that's part of the reason this thing took off. Maybe it's
Mhm.
the whole reason that they even stuck around, right? Because you got to think in today's world, they're swiping, they're swiping, they're swiping. They're looking for something that will capture their attention. And you did that exceedingly well by eating the stick of butter. And then maybe a few people stuck around and actually heard what you were saying and thought, well,
Mhm.
wait a minute, she's not crazy. But
Right.
it seems to me that you have a very avant-garde kind of personality where you're willing to go out and try new things and beat the expectations that others have. So, how is it that you got into the diet that you're on? I've
Mhm.
seen you post about this, talk about it at length, but it's also a type of diet that for the average person, it may seem extreme,
Right.
or if you're used to the food pyramid, which, who knows how many obesities that cause in our world,
Yep.
millions upon millions upon millions. How much did that damage the life expectancy? But trust everything the government says. But anyway, um, for people who trusted that for generations, right? For the
Mhm.
entire time it was posted in their cafeterias at their public schools, watching you eat a stick of butter, they think you're doing like a death sentence.
They
So
do.
tell us about how you did this discovery of this diet and what it did for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a bunch of research about cuz I like to find more natural ways to improve my health instead of just taking a pill for everything. And so I've had endometriosis ever since puberty, and I've I tried so many different things to just try to alleviate a lot of the symptoms that were associated with that. And and one of the big suggestions is, oh, don't eat as much meat, go vegan or mostly vegetarian at least. I've tried that and it only made things worse. And after doing more and more research and wanting to just try just about anything, I stumbled on in a keto group where a woman was talking about how she went carnivore diet and it balanced her hormones and and it got rid of most of her endometriosis symptoms. And I was like, I might as well try it. And so I gave it a try. I told my family about it. My mom was so scared because she's like, wait, you aren't going to be eating any vegetables? Be careful. And all that fat, you're eating all those fats. That sounds dangerous. And people were worried, but I was like, I'm just going to try and see what happens. And sure enough, after like 2 months, my hormones were more balanced. All of a sudden, I didn't have like debilitating cramps. I wasn't having like bloating and fatigue and all this stuff that I had before. And my symptoms were like almost completely gone, which was unheard of for me before. And so I've stuck with it ever since. And there's been times where I've tried to introduce stuff again, like, oh, let me introduce, a little cucumber or broccoli. And, I get flare-ups when I do that. So for me, this has worked so well because it just served as like an elimination diet. And there's so many people in the carnivore community that have fixed so many different problems. Some can still introduce stuff back later and be fine. Some have to be more strict. It just depends. But I'm one of those that apparently I'm sensitive a lot to oxalates from plants and things like that. But yeah, it's just really... It really made me think of things a lot different. I think that's what made me question a lot of things from society, from the government, and from just all these approved guidelines in general that we have in our lives, and the expert advice that we get on things is, okay, if me doing the opposite of what I was told helped improve my health, what does it say about everything else?
Right. Maybe if the foundation of nutrition is eating pasta, maybe that's not a good idea.
Right.
And maybe the government didn't get that one.
And them saying like cereal is better for you than meat. It's just crazy. It's just like when you really think about it and you think about, some of the most natural ways that you could possibly eat right now, it would be eating meat and dairy. But for some reason,
so talk to me, and
demonized.
this is not a nutrition channel. I want to clarify for everybody. Go find your own nutritionist. Don't take advice from us. Do your own research and all that. But that said, okay, that's interesting. And even when it's off topic for what we cover in this channel, I want to key in on things that are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard different people say different things about dairy. You said though that you think dairy's a-okay. Is that your... What's your research into that?
I think it's largely going to depend. A lot of people are lactose intolerant, so obviously they're going to be a different case there. But even so, a lot of that has to do with like pasteurizing stuff, because I've seen in the carnivore community, which again, I'm not claiming to be an expert. That's just my opinions, whatever. But I've seen a lot of people in like carnivore communities, or even just in general, who could never tolerate dairy, but then they, try unpasteurized dairy and they're just fine and handle it just fine, because a lot of the enzymes that are there to help you break down dairy are killed off in the pasteurizing process. And so that is why a lot of people can't tolerate, regular dairy.
See. I had never thought of that.
For me, I can handle it fine either way, but for a lot of people, they can't. But a lot of people are just so quick to write off dairy as being bad for you, but it's just like, inherently dairy isn't. And when you think about raw milk, it's like a superfood. So
sure.
But for some reason, it's just all demonized.
Well, that seems to be something that we do quite often and unfairly.
Mm-hmm.
In social media, one of the ills that I see that we need to rectify over time is that we often demonize and disparage and jump to the most toxic kind of commentary about strangers, essentially, people that we don't know. And you would never act that way in real life. You would never walk down to a hotel lobby and see someone standing there making their opinion and it's slightly different than yours and you jump in their face. But on social media,
Exactly.
and there's the opportunity to gain followers in doing that. It's incentivized to some degree. But just to clarify, so when you're talking about doing this carnivore diet, you're doing that for self-improvement, it sounds like. It's not because you hate animals. It's not because you want suffering in the world. You want to lower your own suffering. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. It's for my own health and it's for my own self-improvement because I feel a lot better. I'm 36 years old and I feel like I could run laps around myself at 16 because it's improved my health so much and I just feel a lot more energy and I feel a lot better overall. So it's been great. And even beyond that, a lot of, you constantly will see people say, oh, well, think about the animals, think about the animals. But if you really unpack it, a person can live off of like one singular cow for about a year, give or take,
Sure.
right? And the amount of animals that are killed off in actual plant agriculture is far more than that. And especially when you're factoring in environmental stuff with the chemical based foods that they make just to say they're not made with animals, like the fake butters and all of these processed vegan foods that are way more taxing on the environment or that are killing a lot more rodents and things like that. Yeah.
Sure, and it's almost like they're making a hierarchy, right? It's okay. So to get my soybeans, it's okay to kill a trillion grasshoppers,
Right.
and their larvae, but don't kill the cows.
Right.
That's sort of, and you create this false hierarchy of value within creatures. But anyway, one of the things that I've always taken to be odd about the argument for veganism from an ethical standpoint is that I don't think that people who make that argument understand that we all die. We all have a physical death, and animals all physically die. And so they either die of disease and old age. I mean, the actual way that cows die, if you let a cow live as long as it can live until it reaches its full life expectancy and it passes away, the natural progression of death for a cow is that because it's a herbivore that constantly chews grass, it chews away its teeth. And so a cow in old age will die of starvation, which is a miserable death.
Wow.
Right. And so it seems to me that a far more humane way of handling this is to end the life of the cow in the most respectful, dignified, humane way possible. I'm not here to argue that we should cause suffering. That's crazy.
Exactly.
I mean, you're a crazy person if you're causing suffering. But I've never understood the ethical argument there because, like I said, none of us get out of here alive physically. So maybe there's a dreamland out there that I don't know about while participating in. So here's what I'm curious about, though. So you're talking about self-improvement, and one of the things that I have witnessed over the last years within entertainment and pop culture is this denial of the need for self-improvement. And we see this both in advice. People will say, you're just perfect the way you are. And it's like, no, you're not. And what a horrible existence if you believe that, because then you have nowhere to go. You just, are you just going to be aimless and have nowhere? Because that's a denial of your potential, right?
Exactly.
They just stripped away your potential once they say that you're fine the way you are. It's like, well, you have nothing better to do in your life now. Just sit. And then the other thing is that's permeating our characters in entertainment. So, for example, you might think of Rey from the sequel trilogy Star Wars. Where Rey begins in The Force Awakens is where Rey ends with the rise of Skywalker / Palpatine. We'll get critiques if I don't say that. But she's the same character, essentially, because we've come to a place where if you fit within certain intersectional groupings, you have to be perfect. You have to be presented as perfect, and you can't have flaws to overcome, and it's utterly boring. Have you noticed the same in the gaming space? Have you noticed anything like this?
Yeah, we're seeing it in video games a lot as well. And I'm a huge Tomb Raider fan, the classics. And when you see what they've done just with like Lara Croft, for example, with her appearance, not only that, but in terms of her personality, because classic Lara Croft was not a heroic, perfect character. She was very selfish and she did things that were wrong sometimes. She was almost anti-hero in a way. But that doesn't fit with the current woke narrative to where, oh wait, here's a female lead, she has to be good and she has to be good in everything that she does. So they've changed her from being a grave robber, a selfish grave robber who just did what she want for the thrill of it. They changed her from that to now she's a protector of artifacts. She's goody two shoes now. She
Right.
can't be an actual Tomb Raider, which is the title of her games. And it is so frustrating to see. And what we're getting is very boring characters as a result of that when it comes to female characters. So they want to complain that people don't like female characters. Why don't people like female characters? Well, they're boring right now. They're dull. They have
Because
no
they're not allowed to be
progression.
imperfect.
Exactly. They're not allowed to be perfect. They're not allowed to be imperfect. They're not allowed to do things wrong sometimes. They're not allowed to mess up, all that. It's just like, okay, they have to be always seen as perfect.
Right. So let's talk too about this idea of identity, because one of the things that interests me is that I have always thought that identity is something that you earn. So, for example, when I go to the doctor, someone in the waiting room who looks like they're crazy, disheveled, and that they just came out of their home or their apartment that morning and in their bathrobe, they don't get to stand up and say, "I'm the doctor here." And
Right.
I don't believe that, because you can't just proclaim your identity and therefore it is. And I really do think that this movement where your proclamation of your identity is enough, it's sufficient. I think this is coming out of a generation, the first generation to be raised by the internet, because, since, let's say, ICQ, right? People have been out there saying, "Oh, I'm this and I'm that." And you have no way to verify, you have no way to know. But in the real life, that doesn't work, right? In the real world, you have to earn your identity. And there's a juxtaposition of people coming from the internet, being raised by it to a large degree, and then they come into this real world and they say, "Well, why can't I? Why can't I say that I'm a tiger and therefore I'm a tiger?" And it's like, well, that you haven't earned that identity. So one of the things that I think is happening is because people have associated the idea of identity with whatever I wish it to be that day, I can declare it. They're now mining virtue out of identity attributes. And we see this with the April O'Neil situation with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Seth Rogen putting it out there. Seth Rogen, just to do a recap for everybody, Seth Rogen in the last 2 years has essentially come out and taken an anti-white activism role. He said he doesn't want to hire as many people who are of that ethnicity, whatever you may think that ethnicity includes, who knows. He has blamed that group of ethnicities for his Santa Inc. Being an abysmal failure. That was the Christmas movie that is the lowest rated property on all of Rotten Tomatoes. And trust me, Rotten Tomatoes will try to save anything. So he's a crazy person, and he's not putting out good content. Now he's out with the Turtles. And it seems to me that he's attempting to bait fans with this, because he's taken April O'Neil, and the thing that's most boring about it is that she has been, her skin tone has been switched. But that to me is boring. I mean, they've done this so many times that it doesn't even register on my radar anymore. In fact, there are other incarnations where this has already happened and nobody said anything. But it's the fact that that's not enough. Now we've taken a character who, has a certain body type and has a certain demeanor, and we've switched to this disheveled, frumpy, unprofessional looking character.
Yep.
And all of these are held up now as esteemed virtues. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
What do you think about this idea now that people are identifying with even physical ailments, where you're overweight and they're like, "Oh no, you're fat phobic because you don't like the new April O'Neil." What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think people just want to be validated. It's like if they don't want to better themselves and they don't want to put in the work to better themselves and improve themselves, they want to just be validated in what they're doing that's wrong and that's unhealthy. And I think at the end of the day, nobody thinks it's okay to bully people for what they look like or this, that, or the other, or for being fat.
Yeah.
nobody thinks we should bully people, but we should not be glorifying it either, because it's not healthy. And we've gotten to the point to where people would rather, instead of seeing a character who's extraordinary and want to try to emulate that or try to better themselves to, this
Right. Aim
inspires me.
higher.
Yeah. Instead of just being like, oh, this inspires me to go to the gym. Oh, all right. I want to be healthier. Let me be the best I can be. Instead, they want to just look at these characters who will instead just validate them living slothfully, or their unhealthy habits that they may have. And that's just not good for anybody. And not only that too, but I also think it is partially because Hollywood, especially, and the woke movement and all that, they really don't like feminine women. They don't like feminine beauty from women, and they don't like masculine men. That's why they want to act
They want
like,
to flatten that all out. They want to bring that to the middle, to sort of an androgynous place.
yeah. And so when you've got like these they them looking April O'Neils now, then it furthers that agenda as well of just kind of erasing masculine men and feminine women, and everybody just needs to be this amorphous they them fat blob instead.
And in my opinion, it's all cruel, and I'll tell you why I think so. Okay, so you create this content, and we're not just picking on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. This is throughout. We could go on. We could do 100 examples of this in the last few years. But you make this content that that epitomizes and praises the things that are mundane or boring or lesser than. So being frumpy or fat, or and again, no offense. But we want to aim for the best in our content. Yeah. That's what we should be doing, right? The Greeks didn't build statues of people sitting on their keisters, right? They built the statues of the most athletic looking individuals you can imagine. And that's why we're still staring at that stuff today.
Yep.
But we take that and then we pump that into children. And that's what's cruel to me, is because we're telling children that these are the things that you should idolize. But at the same time, okay, here's the cruel part. Here's the switch. The people who are making this at the top, the people who are putting this forth, there's no way that they got to the top by being any of the things that they are now propagandizing to children. So there's two psychological indicators of success that rise above anything else. Okay, number one is your IQ level. And that's a hard thing in life, because we know people who have low IQ levels. That doesn't mean they can't overcome them, but it just means that the difficulty of this game called life is higher for them. Yeah. And that's unfair, but it is what it is. There's no way at this current point to fix that. But the second thing, and this is something that can be changed, the second thing, for the highest indicator for success in life, is your ability to delay gratification. Now, when we're talking about delayed gratification, we're talking about all of those virtues that you've been discussing, like maintaining a healthy diet, like going to the gym and doing the unpleasant things of working out, spending an hour, 2 hours doing that, putting in the reps, furthering your education, reading, doing all of these things that we all know make us into better individuals. That's all delayed gratification, because it leads into a successful life down the road. But our heroes that they're putting forth today, again, to go back to Rey from Star Wars, since we use that example, we're not trying to pick on Star Wars either. Rey doesn't have to train. Why does Rey not have to train, whereas other characters do? Because Rey's perfect already. And that's the message, is that you can be frumpy, you can be dumb, you can be ignorant, you can be disheveled, you can be all of these things that in the past we knew that's not where you should. It may be where you are today, but it's not where you have to be tomorrow. We're taking all of that and we're saying that's good enough for you, even though I didn't do that and that's how I got to the top. What do you think about that? That's the cruelty I see in it.
Yeah, it is very cruel, and it's very cruel to the younger generation as well. And when you really look at things like the fat positivity movement, body positivity movement, all that, what it's doing is it's enabling these bad habits in young people, and they're really throwing away a lot of their lives that they could be living so much better. They could be feeling so much better, because it's sad to see young children especially have to suffer with their weight when that never was a thing that much for older generations. It
And
was
isn't it
so
weird?
rare.
Isn't it weird, Melanie, that the position we take is we want you to feel good, and the
Yeah,
reply back is you're fat phobic. It's like
exactly.
no, we want you to feel good and lead a healthy life. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, because I mean, that's just the reality of the situation is that people who are fat, they're going to have struggles with their health. They're not going to feel as good. It also affects just mentally everything. That what you eat and what you're putting in your body is going to affect you. And it's going to affect your quality of life. And so wanting to encourage people to be healthy and lead happier lives as a result, that's fat phobic now. And it's just crazy how things have gotten to this point.
Sure. And then the other thing that's happening is that because people are now taking value out of their identity, out of this intersectionality where they say, oh, well, I fall into these categories and therefore I have intrinsic virtue, right? I don't have to do any better. I get intrinsic virtue from
Yeah.
these. And you're bad because you're in these categories and they don't have intrinsic value, right? And then you do like a little intersectional scorecard where you say, okay, well, I've got this many points from these immutable attributes that I was born with. So therefore I'm better than you, blah, 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 blah. One of the things about that then is that it diminishes, well, it completely eradicates the idea that every single person is divinely, infinitely valuable. And so here's a problem with that. So the same people who will tell you, oh, you're being mean because you're calling someone, a bad name, you're fat phobic, and you're like, I just want them to be healthy.
Yeah.
At the same time, when you're like, that person is infinitely and divinely valuable, then you'll get accused because they'll say, no, that's not true. There's nothing more to this life. It's like,
Right.
wait a minute, pick one. Which one are we going to do?
It doesn't line up. But then also they wanted to validate everyone's bad habits and stuff and then say, oh, wait, you're perfect the way you are. But then at the same time, then they will say that kids can be transgender and that what happened to you're perfect the way you are. Now you're encouraging children to
That's right.
mutilate their bodies.
It's a giant tangled mess
Yeah.
of inconsistencies, but all of it aimed at, in my opinion, all of it aimed at muddling up the thought processes of young children and young adults who are grasping onto this pop culture, and all that it does by teaching them that they don't need to delay gratification, that they don't need to invest in long-term self-improvement, that their identity overrides their self-improvement. All that does is lead them to a future of unsuccess and unhappiness. That's the only way that I see it.
Yeah, and people feel entitled to stuff because then they're oh well, if I'm perfect, I'm special the way I am, this and that, then they think that oh now I deserve this amazing job that I'm not qualified for only because I'm a woman or something like that. That's where things have gone to where I want to be. You see this in the gaming industry all the time where people are like, oh, I want to be in the gaming industry. I want to work at this company. How dare they only hire mostly men or whatever. And they look at the identities of the people that are being hired and feel like because their identity is different, they deserve and they are entitled to be hired for this position instead of actually, just taking a step back and thinking maybe people should just be hired based on their talent and what they can contribute.
Sure, absolutely. Well, again, back to that the work you put into it to develop yourself into someone of specialist abilities and the meritocracy that should exist. And we've stepped away from that because we've taken the merit of the individual. We've taken the content, the character of one's heart, the abilities of one's intellect, the specializing qualities of each person. And we've sort of melted that away and said, no, it's not about that. It's about the DNA that you came into this world with that you had no election over. That's what matters. It's like, well, thanks. Because that steals my adventure, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Melanie, to put it in like a video game analogy, it would be like, did you ever play World of Warcraft much?
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine that you're in the starting area for the humans, right? And you're level 1. You're right there. I don't remember the name of the little building that you start up with, but the wolves are all around you, right? You're inside the gate, so you're okay. But imagine that a level 60 night elf in World of Warcraft Vanilla comes riding in and starts telling all the level ones, no, 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 no. You don't have to do what I've done. Stay at level 1. Don't go kill the little wolves. Don't kill the Defias. Just hang out here. You don't need to quest. You're perfect just the way you are. And that's the society we're building. A bunch of level 1s. Just level 1s everywhere.
That is so well said. And even in gaming, you see that reflect with, even apart from character designs, but how much they babied down gaming in terms of gameplay compared to
and people don't
past
like it.
Generations. Yeah. And it's just like they have because this entitled crowd and this crowd that doesn't care about delayed gratification, all that sort of thing, they just want everything handed to them. They have wanted to be a part of the gaming space and the gaming industry, and they've hijacked it into where now it's at the point to where gamers that were considered casuals back 15 years ago are considered the hardcore now, because they have been especially in the West, like AAA games, they've been catering to the lowest common denominator of these fake gamers who just want to sit and watch a pretty story for a few hours, but don't actually want any challenging gameplay. They don't want to have to overcome any obstacles in the game. They just want to look at pretty graphics. They're really focusing a lot on that demographic. And so we're not getting as many games that are actual video games that you actually got to go through some challenges and overcome some difficulties and maybe practice a bit, practice your technique, or if it's an RPG type train and grind up to a higher level, that sort of thing. They've eliminated a lot of that for these just common denominator short, mostly focused on cutscene experiences.
Well, that was the problem with Overwatch, is that, and they had the top game in the world for, until Fortnite came and knocked them off. But they had every reason in the world to be this generation-defining video game, but they attached themselves to this idea that they were not going to allow there to be a skill ceiling that would scale up, right? So they wanted to flatten out that skill ceiling so that there was a point where your character, no matter how good you were, you couldn't take over. But what we've all found out is that, and this carries over in esports, this carries over when you're playing a single player game, this carries over into real life and the things that we want to watch and want to do. When you take away the ability to be absolutely the best, but at the requirement that you learn and grow and overcome major obstacles, you steal the adventure that's in life. And so for everybody out there, go find your adventure. Go out there, and if it's hard to do, but it's worthwhile, go and do it. Find something. Otherwise, what are you doing with your life? You don't want to be perfect the way you are. That's awful. Go out there and reach your potential.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like if you've got nothing else to strive for in life and you already feel like, all right, this is it. I was born into this world. You're welcome. I'm perfect. Like, you've got nothing to strive for. You've got no goals to try to achieve there. That's a sad existence.
It is. But one thing that's not a sad existence is this conversation. Melonie, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about these things that are permeating entertainment, both in movies, TV shows, and video games. And I think, again, is really detrimental to young people all over the world. I hope we can get away from it. I hope that we can regain the adventure and the excitement of life. And I hope we can get away from putting people into these sort of tribalistic boxes and get back to saying, you know what? You're human. You're a person. And that means that you are infinitely valuable to me and everybody else. And I'm going to treat you that way. Melonie, final thoughts on this topic. What do you got?
Great discussion. I agree with what you just said there. And I think that hopefully the tides will turn and we'll start seeing our characters and these properties be idealistic and help us to want to try to be better in general.
That's right. Overcome the hard stuff.
Yes.
Don't be defined by it. And certainly Don't avoid it for the sake of avoiding hard things. Melonie, where can people find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
Yes, everyone can find me at Melonie Mac Go Boom on YouTube. That's where I upload my more nerdy commentary videos. And then I also stream at Twitch at Melonie Mac. And then all over regular social media like Twitter and Instagram at Melonie Mac as well.
All right, folks, it's in the description down below. Make sure you go click on all that and subscribe. Thank you once again for being here. Folks, if you like content like this, make sure you click the like button, share, subscribe, and stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about the notification bell. We covet your comments because we really care what you think. Drop one down below and let us know what your thoughts are. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.